$67 represented the total annual income for a citizen standing in this location in 1953. The air was thick with the smell of cordite and the dust of pulverized brick following 3 years of brutal conflict that had erased the urban landscape. Mortar shells had reduced centuries of heritage to little more than piles of gray rubble and twisted rebar. Foreign observers declared that reconstruction would take at least a century to achieve basic functionality. They were completely wrong. Seoul did not just rebuild, it reinvented the concept of the modern megacity. Today, the metropolis stands as a neon-soaked titan of the global economy, housing nearly 10 million people in a high-tech basin surrounded by granite peaks. This transformation was not an accident of history. It was a deliberate, ferocious engineering campaign fueled by sheer willpower. To understand the scale of this resurrection, we must look back to the original blueprints drawn in 1394. King Taejo, the founder of the Joseon dynasty, selected this site based on the principles of Pungsujiri, a Korean variation of Feng Shui. He sought a location cradled by four inner mountains, with the majestic Bukhansan to the north acting as a guardian spirit. A massive wall stretching over 18 kilometers was constructed to define the city's limits, tracing the ridges of these protective peaks. Stonemasons chiseled granite blocks by hand, hauling them up steep slopes to create a fortification that would define the city's boundaries for 500 years. For centuries, the city remained within these walls, a quiet administrative center dominated by the tiled roofs of Gyeongbokgung Palace. But geography is destiny. The Han River, which bisects the modern city, was originally a wild, flood-prone beast that kept the settlement confined to the northern bank. The 20th century brought devastation that shattered this ancient tranquility. The Korean War left the capital in absolute ruin, with over 80% of its infrastructure destroyed or heavily damaged. When the armistice was signed, the city was a refugee camp of shanties and mud roads. The resurrection began in earnest during the 1960s under the authoritarian drive of President Park Chung-hee, who prioritized economic growth above all else. This era gave rise to the miracle on the Han, a period of explosive industrialization. Concrete mixers worked 24/7 as new skyscrapers rose simultaneously across the financial district. The government appointed Kim Hyun-ok, nicknamed the Bulldozer, as mayor in 1966 to force the city into modernity. He lived up to his name. Under his command, hills were leveled and shantytowns were cleared to make way for elevated highways and massive apartment complexes. One of the most audacious projects of this era was the transformation of the Cheonggyecheon stream. Once a fresh waterway where women washed clothes, it had become an open sewer filled with trash and squatter camps. Mayor Kim's solution was to bury it completely. Engineers laid miles of concrete pipes and covered the stream with asphalt, building an elevated highway directly on top of the watercourse. For decades, this concrete artery carried 160,000 cars a day, symbolizing the city's industrial triumph. But the most dramatic shift occurred south of the river. In the early 1970s, the area now known as Gangnam was nothing more than flat pear orchards and cabbage patches. Urban planners drew a grid on the farmland and began a terraforming project of immense scale. Millions of tons of soil were shifted to raise the ground level to prevent flooding. Bridge aerials from the 1980s show the Han River being tamed by massive concrete levees, turning the wild waterway into a controlled channel. As the 1988 Olympics approached, Seoul became a vast construction site. The government aggressively developed the southern bank, forcing prestigious high schools and government offices to relocate to Gangnam to spur growth. It worked. Real estate values in the district skyrocketed, turning farmers into millionaires overnight. The skyline cranes never stopped moving. By the turn of the millennium, the city had become a vertical forest of steel and glass, but it was suffocating under its own success. The air quality plummeted, and the concrete jungle created a heat island effect that made summers unbearable. This sparked a new era of eco-engineering. In a stunning reversal of the bulldozer mentality, Lee Myung-bak, who would later become president, won the mayoralty in 2002 on a promise to tear down the very highway that symbolized modernization. He proposed digging up the Cheonggyecheon stream. Critics said it was impossible to remove a major arterial road without causing traffic chaos. They were ignored. Demolition crews began dismantling the elevated highway, removing over 900,000 tons of concrete debris from the city center. We can imagine the scene as heavy machinery tore into the roadway, exposing the darkness beneath for the first time in decades. The restoration cost over $380 million and required pumping 120,000 tons of water daily from the Han River to keep the stream flowing. Today, a drone flying through clouds over the city reveals a 10.9-kilometer green corridor cutting through the high-rises, reducing the ambient temperature of the surrounding area by several degrees. However, the true marvel of Seoul lies beneath the asphalt. The city sits atop one of the world's most extensive and efficient subway systems. This is not just transit, it is a hardened bunker network. Construction of Line 1 began in 1971, and today the system spans over 300 kilometers. As you descend the escalators, you are entering a dual-purpose facility designed to shelter millions in the event of renewed conflict. Heavy steel blast doors are recessed into the walls of major stations, ready to seal off the tunnels. The depth of these stations is staggering. Some lines require commuters to descend nearly 50 meters underground, passing through layers of granite bedrock. The engineering required to bore these tunnels through the complex geology of the Korean peninsula involved thousands of geologists and structural engineers working around the clock. In the digital age, this subterranean world is also the spine of the city's nervous system. Seoul boasts the world's highest density of fiber-optic cables. Technicians laid thousands of miles of high-speed lines through these tunnels, ensuring that even deep underground, connectivity is never lost. This digital infrastructure powers the smart city initiatives that monitor everything from traffic flow to water levels. Sensors embedded in the roads communicate with the traffic lights, adjusting signal timing in real time to prevent gridlock. It is a city that thinks. The skyline continues to evolve with ambitious megaprojects. The crown jewel is the Lot World Tower, piercing the clouds at 555 meters. Completed in 2017, it is the tallest building in South Korea and the sixth tallest in the world. Its design is inspired by traditional Korean ceramics and calligraphy brushes, tapering elegantly as it rises. Constructing this behemoth required a foundation of unprecedented strength. Workers poured 32,000 cubic meters of high-strength concrete continuously for 30 hours to create the matte foundation, a solid slab nearly as thick as a three-story building. The tower utilizes a diagrid structural system, which reduces the need for internal columns and allows for panoramic views. High above the streets, the Sky Bridge Tour allows brave visitors to walk between the tower's twin peaks, held safe only by a harness and the precision of modern metallurgy. Nearby, the Dongdaemun Design Plaza, designed by the late Zaha Hadid, looks like a spaceship that landed in the middle of a historic market district. This neo-futuristic landmark has no straight lines or right angles. Its fluid aluminum-plated skin required the fabrication of 45,000 unique panels, each curved differently. A robotic manufacturing process was invented specifically for this project, marking a shift from mass production to mass customization. The plaza illuminates the night with thousands of perforated lights, creating a visual anchor that contrasts sharply with the ancient city gates nearby. The city's transformation is also visible in its logistics. The port of Incheon, the maritime gateway to Seoul, handles the endless stream of cargo ships in the harbor that fuel the export economy. Giant container cranes move with rhythmic precision, loading the semiconductors and automobiles that drove the nation's wealth. Yet the city faces new challenges. The miracle on the hand created wealth, but it also created a pressure cooker society. The population is aging rapidly, and the cost of housing in the prestigious Gangnam district rivals that of Manhattan. Urban planners are now looking toward regeneration rather than expansion. Old industrial zones like Seongsudong are being converted into cultural hubs, preserving the red brick skeletons of factories while filling them with galleries and cafes. Looking to the future, the city is betting on the Digital Media City (DMC), a high-tech complex built on a former landfill. This area, once a mountain of garbage, has been transformed into a cluster of glass skyscrapers housing the nation's top media and technology firms. It is a symbol of Seoul's ability to metabolize its own waste and turn it into gold. The methane gas generated by the decomposing trash beneath the parks is captured and used to heat the surrounding stadiums and apartments. This is the ultimate feat of urban alchemy. As night falls, the cinematic fog over rooftops clears to reveal a galaxy of lights. The Seoul Tower atop Namsan Mountain beams in different colors to indicate air quality, a digital lighthouse watching over the sprawl. The Han River, once a barrier, is now the city's lungs, lined with parks where cyclists ride under the illuminated arches of 27 bridges. The Bampo Bridge puts on a show, pumping tons of water from the river and spraying it in a rainbow cascade, a celebration of the engineering that tamed the water. Seoul's journey from the ashes of 1953 to a leading global city is a case study in human resilience. It is a place where the memory of starvation is still alive in the minds of the elderly, even as their grandchildren compete in global esports tournaments in stadiums built of light and data. The city does not hide its scars, it builds on top of them. Every layer of concrete, every buried stream, and every fiber-optic cable tells the story of a people who refuse to be defined by destruction. It is a vertical testament to the idea that with enough concrete, steel, and collective will, a nation can write its own future. The miracle is not that Seoul survived. The miracle is that it never stopped running.